Oh my gosh. Okay. Wonderful. All right. Can you still see me?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm looking on
Wonderful.
my phone and awesome.
All right. Well, I am so excited. I'm Mary Langfield, and we are back with a little interview with an amazing human who has started an incredible organization. And she's sort of the epitome of what I think of as a joyful feminist when I think about women that I want to be connected with, women that I want to follow, and women who are doing extremely important work. And so I am so lucky because I got to meet Akila on Instagram by simply following her really wonderful updates on her affirmation cards for children. So this is
Mhm.
not all she does, right? She is a very like she's chock full of amazing information. She has so many tools. Her interests are varied, and she's just a really incredible person. And I thought it would be so fun to be able to not just talk with her, pick her brain a little bit, and help us maybe think a little bit more globally or more holistically when it comes to us
Mhm.
and how we raise our children. So, we are going to get a background, we're going to get what she's doing now. But I just want you guys to, if you have any questions when it comes to us chatting today, please type them in the chat and we'll do our best to answer them. She is in the group. You'll get access to her Instagram so you can follow her if you like. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm just so excited that you are here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. That was an intro for sure. Yeah, I really appreciate it. I'm excited to have this talk just based on our connections beforehand. To now, I think this is going to be something that hopefully the women in this group can really take out some good information from. So I'm excited. And
Yeah.
apologize in advance if you hear like my daughter's TV or her tablet.
Because
Yeah.
this is life. This is life. That was the thing that we talked about too. I was like, you have a little one, let's not worry about it because that's something that I think all of us women have to really relax about, and men too,
Mhm.
that our kids are around,
Yeah.
and that's okay. And if they disrupt because they're allowed, and we
Yeah.
we didn't grow up that way. We talked about this. So,
No. Yeah. No.
yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah. So, you know, I mean, you wrote me a little intro, but I would love you to tell us. So you started a company called
Mhm.
Nurturing Young Minds, and there's an evolution, a beautiful evolution of how you've gotten to this point. But can you just tell us a little bit about why did you start this business?
Yeah. So I started as a preschool teacher. Um, and that was a few years ago. I taught for a few years. Here she is. I taught for a few years, and then I decided that I didn't want to be in the classroom anymore. I decided that I wanted to have my own business because that's just a personal thing for me. I knew that I didn't want to like just set working 9 to 5 anymore. So when I started my business after stopping teaching, it wasn't nurturing young minds. How I got to nurturing young minds was I got to a point where my business wasn't doing great. And it was like, okay, do I just go a little harder with my business? Do I start a new business or do I go back to teaching? And so I was going to go back to teaching because for me, I knew that I could. I knew that I can go, and I did. I went on an interview and they were going to offer me a position. Um, and I talked with my dad, and he was kind of like, I think you should just start a home daycare. And so I was just like, okay. And that was the plan. And this was March, either late February, early March of 2020, which we know that by mid March, the first shelter in place happened. And I had to take like some health courses, to be certified in order to do the daycare. And the classes were getting canceled, and that kind of happened. But I really liked the curriculum planning of being a preschool teacher. I think that I had a different take on it. Um, Oh my goodness, something just popped up on my computer. Yeah. So I think that I had a different take on it. So I started just doing that. Like, this COVID's gonna blow over, shelter in place, we'll give it a month. And, I'll just start the curriculum until then. Did not blow over. So by May, I was on Etsy and I was selling the curriculum that I created as a digital, um, like digital activities. So I started doing that, got a couple sales, and then some people, like strangers on Etsy, were like, I love this, but I don't have a printer. Um, I would love to buy them like already printed. Okay, cool. Started doing that. And I wanted to make sure that they were durable because these are kids. So I would like print them and laminate them, ship them out. Then I wanted people to get more value for their money. So I just created like these bundles. And then I had the idea of doing affirmation cards. And I got this idea because I didn't learn about affirmations until I was at least 19 years old. Um, and so I think that they're really powerful. I started using them with my daughter when she was only a year old, right before she turned 2. She was talking enough to repeat after me. So that's how we started. By the end of that year, she was saying them on her own. Um, so yeah, so I was like, I think this will be really powerful to create affirmation cards for kids. Once I did that, they quickly became my bestseller. And that just shifted the whole, like, my whole business. I paused from doing selling learning activities because my whole thing is that I wanted people to know that nurturing a child's mind is so much more than just nurturing their mind. Like, it's not ignoring all the other parts of them. Like, you really have to get to know them, understand them, and nurture them as a whole in order to really get their mind to where you want it, if that makes sense. We live in America where we focus on school and academics and grades and achievements, and we kind of don't focus on the well-being of a child. And that's not okay with me. Like, as a preschool teacher, like, we were doing flashcards and things like that with toddlers, and parents wanted that. If we didn't do that, parents were expecting us to do that because they wanted their kids to be prepared for when they go to kindergarten and primary school. And I understand that, but there's so much more that they need to learn. So that's kind of like how it all got started. And when I saw that it easily led into the affirmation cards, I decided then that that's where I'm going to start with the social emotional development, the well-being of children, and then I'm going to branch out from there. And I still plan on doing the curriculum again, like the learning activities, in the way that I feel like would benefit schools even as well as homeschooling parents. But I'm not going to start there. Like, I started there technically, but I just had to start all over, and we're starting with their well-being, and then we'll lead up into their academics.
Yes. Ooh. So one of the things that I think that we can sort of agree on, like why the affirmations are so important and why that social emotional development is so important, is we talked about, growing up, like our feelings weren't validated. We were supposed to be seen and not heard. There's
Mhm.
just so many ways in which kids don't feel not just not seen, but they don't feel like they're part of the story. Like
Yeah.
it's either about them or it isn't. And
Mhm.
as we've become parents, it's like, wait a second, we want them to know that what they're going through is important. But simultaneously, so this is like a big comment, and there's so much I think you'll be able to share after this, but like the other piece that's so difficult when you're a parent is that sometimes we don't have the tools because nobody showed us how to be able to be patient through the big feelings, to show us how to be able
Yeah.
to sit with the anger that they're going through and the throwing and the temper tantrums, and to be able to do that with also having kind of an overlay of, but these are the rules of the house. You can't just
Mhm.
break. Like it's a very complicated. I mean, it doesn't have to be complicated, I'm sure. I'm sure there's some people who make it super easy, but it's a whole new way of being, because the
Yeah.
only way I saw how to parent was like, you just do this, go do this, suck it up, go do it.
Hmm.
Or stop crying, or stop being like this, or get over it,
Yeah.
versus what are you going through? What's it like? And
Yeah, for sure. So it's like, I don't even know really if there is an easy way to do that. I'm not sure what it is. I think that maybe like our kids will probably have it easy because they will experience less of the suppressing and things like that than we did. But as far as it being easy, it's a challenge because we are recreating parenting methods. Like we're not just duplicating what our parents did. We're remembering, which some of us, raising my hand, um, have suppressed it for so long. Like it's just that's just the way things were. You didn't think anything was wrong with the way that you were parented. A lot of people say like I turned out fine. My parents did this and I turned out fine. So you don't see anything wrong with it. And I do truly believe that my parents did the best that they could with how they were raised and what they decided what they wanted to change with the way they raised me and my brother. Um, and it's up to me for me to decide what I wanted to change as well. So that's one thing. And a big part of that is recognizing that children are human. Therefore, they have feelings. They just don't know how to name those feelings. They don't know what to do with their bodies when they feel those feelings. Um, so for us, a kid being upset over losing a toy, like that seems so, it's just a toy. Like you're gonna get more toys for your birthday. Like it's just so small. But for them, that's a big thing. That's like your car getting stolen. Like for us, it's like, okay, well, that's my car. Like that's how I, get around. That's how I take my kids where they need to go. That's a big thing. Well, compared to a kid that doesn't have that responsibility of needing to take their family everywhere, this toy means so much to them. So if we acknowledge that in them and are able to teach them, yes, that's really frustrating. These are some of the options that we can do. Maybe we can try and look for it. Maybe, if we know that we left it out in public, either we can search for it there. And if it, understand that there's the possibility that it's going to be gone. I know you really love that toy, but your birthday is coming up soon. And I know that you're going to get another toy and you might really love that. Like just don't dismiss their feelings because we have to recognize that something that seems really small to us because we are adults or real people, real adult world problems, that's really big for them. So that's like a really big thing that I'm constantly have to reminding myself. It's a habit for me to think that something that a kid goes through is small. It's a habit for me to think of it that way, but I have to constantly remind myself that this is all they know, these 2 3 years that they have on earth. Part of that they weren't even able to talk or walk. This is like all that they know, so that's a really big thing for them. Their toys, their books, their family, that's a big part of their life. So when you go away for a weekend, my husband and I just came back from a weekend, that's a big thing for her. She sees her parents every day, and now she's going to go 2 nights without seeing them, 2 nights where she can't like crawl into their bed in the middle of the night. Like that's a huge thing for her. So I have to be able to acknowledge that within her, which takes a lot of recognizing in me, why am I so triggered off of it? And a lot of times I'm triggered off of it because, well, I wasn't allowed to feel that when I was younger. Like I was told like you're fine. Like, and so it's like the fact that I committed to myself to not do that to her can now possibly trigger me because it's like a flashback of how would my parents have handled this? How am I choosing to handle it now? I have to do this extra work, to really treat her the way that I feel like she should be treated. But I'm a firm believer that the way that we treat them Now it's teaching them how to react, how to respond to situations when they get older, treating them that their feelings don't matter, telling them that that's nothing. They're going to grow up and be those kind of adults that suppress their feelings, hold things in, and probably get taken advantage of, probably have a hard time setting boundaries with others. Like, and having these, building these sort of friendships and relationships with people that don't necessarily value them. Like, all of that can be a result from not honoring your child's feelings. And it's like we don't always see that because, again, we think the toys and things like that are just small things. But it's teaching them how to handle situations as they grow older and become an adult. It's teaching them how to process their emotions, name their emotions. And that's just a huge thing that we have to realize we are teaching them everything. Like, we know this stuff already, but we're teaching them everything. So we know what it is to be frustrated, to be
Yeah.
overwhelmed, yeah, stressed out. They don't. We have
Well,
to help them.
and we know these things. We're like, I always think of this when I'm working with clients. It's like we all know kind of in a way what we should be doing for our health. And in fact, there's so many shoulds, we get so overwhelmed that we don't do them.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have these areas of awareness. Sometimes we have knowledge, but do we actually implement the things, right? So it's like this, having this awareness when you have these small children or older kids who
Yeah.
are having a hard time regulating, who are having a hard time dealing with their feelings, and we've figured out how to cope. That doesn't mean that we're doing it well.
Yeah.
We and sometimes we don't realize actually the tools and the way that you did this, even though it was brilliant as a child because you did your best to try to protect yourself, keep yourself
Mm-hmm.
safe, keep yourself feeling like I'm okay.
Yep.
But now over time these things have become very complicated. You've buried lots of feelings. Now in my lingo we talk about, okay, they've become actual symptoms. This is like,
Mm-hmm.
you're dealing with the headaches probably because of this. Maybe they manifested in your digestive discomfort. But so it's like we have these ways, like our the way that we operate in the world is very brilliant because it's trying to help us. But like what you're saying is we have this awareness that, okay, we want to give our kids more and more
Yeah.
in a way of like acknowledgement and love. And sometimes we don't, I mean, I know I'll speak from my own experience. Like it can
Mm-hmm.
be really hard when your kid is losing their mind and
Yeah.
you're trying to stay peaceful and patient and you realize like you feel nothing this but the sort, like you don't feel anything like peaceful or patient.
Yeah.
And it's just really taking that time to be like, okay, how do I learn how to become peaceful and patient during the storm? Because the way I learned to deal with this was to like walk away or to
Mm-hmm.
not or to numb or to yell or to, and all of a sudden you're faced with it. And it's like you said, it can feel like a lot of work. It's like, so you're raising this child to help them evolve. And at the same
Yeah.
time, you have to deal with your own stuff. And I think it takes everything to a new level. So I really appreciated we had a conversation before just to kind of get to know each other. And you you were telling me about, how these affirmation cards can help with regulating our nervous system and showing them how to lead and show us how they're
Yeah.
feeling and stuff. So can you talk about that, because I think a lot of us can really benefit from what you've learned so far with your own education with young ones, as well as just by moving through life hoping to evolve as a human.
Right. Um, that looks beautiful. So one of the things is I was really crazy about this book. I heard about the title and I was like, I want this book. Every time I went to the library, it was already checked out, like on hold, like the next person was waiting for it. Like I knew that it was going to be a good book. Finally saw it in a bookstore, bought the book, read like half of the first chapter, and I was like, oh, this is so good. And then I like never picked up the book again. Honey, go onto the other couch, please. Like never picked up the book again. But something that I grabbed from the book is How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk. That title alone is like, it just lets you know that like, oh, like there's a way to talk to kids, like to acknowledge them so that they will feel comfortable enough to talk to us. Like that alone says that in the title, right? And that first chapter basically tells you to not dismiss their feelings, to name their feelings. If a kid tells you that they don't want to take a jacket, that doesn't mean that you just say, okay, that's fine, and you don't take a jacket. Let them know, like, it's hot right now. So I understand you don't want your jacket on, but it might get cold by the time we're going home. So I'm just going to bring it in the car with us. Like, acknowledge the fact that they feel that they don't need it. Acknowledge the fact that they have their own body temperature, even though you may be cold and wearing your jacket. So it's like acknowledging those things. And as far as helping them to regulate and kind of what my goal is with the affirmation cards, it's really just about having the conversation, like being willing to be patient enough to have the conversation. We're so in a rush, and I'm speaking like just like really in the US, like we're so in a rush to do things, to work and get dinner ready, or just having these routines about life. And I think that they're helpful in all of this, but when dealing with kids, you really have to take a minute to just slow down and be on their level and have a conversation with them. For one, it's really good for their language development. Like, you want kids with a good vocabulary, you have to be able to use those words with them. That's how they learn them. And then also, asking them questions is such a big thing, and letting them tell you how they feel. They may not know the word frustrated, but they can tell you that maybe they're mad because of this and that. And that means that's more frustrated than it is angry. Like, that they don't. So then you can teach them the word frustrated. So it's like, in order for them to learn how to self-regulate, they have to know what it is. In order for them to know what it is, they have to be taught that. There has to be a conversation. And then once there's a conversation to where the parent, the adult, knows how the child is feeling and has some kind of understanding for them, then that's when they can teach them things that will help them. I'm a crier. That's just, I always have been. It's, for me, it's not even like I cry with sad things. Crying is a release for me. When there's built up any kind of emotion, that's my release, is through crying. Sometimes when I am holding back my words, because I'm trying to process how to say it in a respectful way, I will cry, because that's just me being able to release, since I can't verbally say it right now. The fact that my daughter cries doesn't bother me. When she's upset or sad, or even when she gets in trouble, and she wants to cry, I will talk to her and I'll say, like, do you need a minute to cry? And she'll say, yeah. Sometimes I'll let her go to her room and cry, like if I'm doing something. Sometimes I'll go to the room with her and I'll sit with her, like away from her, and I'll give her space. And I'll just sit with her. And then once she's done crying, then we can have a conversation. Like, I will talk her ear off, like, because I'm like teaching her different things that she can do. She knows that if she's really like worked up, she can take a deep breath, like, and we can do deep breaths together. But she doesn't know that. She's not born knowing that, like, it's okay to cry for a minute. It's okay to go to your room and cry. She isn't born knowing that taking a deep breath will help you kind of like calm your body down a little bit. Like, she's not born knowing these things. It's up to me to figure out what she's feeling, allowing her to tell me what she's feeling, and get this understanding enough to where I can say, well, this might help you. It might help if you do one of these things. And then when they practice that, when they remember, oh, my mom told me this, then that's how they start self-regulating, where she won't need me anymore, because she knows that, okay, let me just take a breath for a second. Okay, you know what? I'm just going to go remove myself. I'm going to have my moment and I'm going to go cry, and then I'm going to come back and I'll be fine. Like, she will be able to know that more, and she won't have to suppress those feelings of, oh, I can't cry right now. Like, my mom's going to feel some type of way if I start crying. Let me like hold it in and I'll wait until later. No, you don't have to feel like that. Like, you can process your emotions on your own, but it all comes with like a conversation, with some understanding, with some practice.
So I think you've sort of mentioned this, but you came up with this name nurturing young minds.
Hmm.
And we chatted a little bit about this name and why you selected this name, and you kind of given indications as to why, but will you say a little bit more?
Yeah. So I, like I said, I like studied childhood development, early childhood development before becoming a preschool teacher, before becoming a mom. Like, that was my career path that I was going down. And with studying that, I learned about the nature versus nurture concept. Um, and there's truth that nurture can affect nature. For example, I just recently learned this. Um, our height, like we see that as nature, like this is unchanging. But technically, based on because it's like genetics, right? So you would think that like at the time of conception it's kind of like predetermined, which it is, but based on the nutrients that mom gets while pregnant and the nutrients baby gets in the first year or two of life, that kind of determines, it's more of a range that, of your height, but it determines like how far you get up to your max is based on the nutrition you get from womb to the first 1 or 2 years of life. That's something that I just learned. So I do know that nurturing can affect nature, but usually nature is kind of just there. It's kind of just set. And there's not a lot of influence, but the influence all comes from nurturing. So it's like we can't affect certain nature aspects, right? But we can affect nurturing. For example, we can't control, like as educators, I'll say, we can't control the family that our children are born into. However, if they are born into a challenging environment at home, and we, have no control over that right now, we can give them a safe and comforting environment at school, right? Um, if we can't control the fact that they have a learning disability, we can control the resources and attention that we give them to help them through it. So this name comes from like, let's focus on what we can help and how we can help benefit children. Let's focus on that and let's nurture them. And as a teacher, it was like, okay, nurturing their minds as a young age. Like I used to want to do elementary school. Like I can't even imagine it anymore. So like I'm really focusing on the younger children. So it's like this idea of nurturing young minds, but my unofficial slogan is to nurture the mind is to nurture the child as a whole. Like you have to be willing to figure out the environment that a child needs, the kind of coping strategies that a child needs, the kind of nutrition that benefits the child. You have to be willing to look at all of that in order to really focus on, how to set a child up for success in the classroom. Like, if that's the goal, right, is to get them prepared for when they go into um, primary school, then it's like, then these are the things we need to work on beforehand that have nothing to do with academics. This is what we need to do to prepare them to work on their academics.
Yeah. And I think that this leads into a really nice segue of, you learning and knowing yourself and what you can offer, right? Because this idea of helping and this
Hmm.
idea of nurturing and offering whatever is needed in order for that child or whomever to thrive
Yeah.
is part of your nature, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Definitely.
I love that this is kind of where we're going because as as somebody who just wants people to feel their best, like
Hmm.
physically, mentally, and emotionally, I also am so excited for people to be living into their purpose.
Hmm.
So, one of the fun things that we talked about was just you are an Enneagram number two, and that means you're the helper. And
Yeah.
as you look at this aspect of yourself, it's kind of led you on this incredible journey. And you know that you're meant to do this. Like, not
Yeah.
necessarily, and guys, we're not even talking about just this this company, but we're
Mm-mm.
just talking about it as this whole. So can you elaborate on how you came to understand that this was what you were meant to do and whatever that is, like whatever the what is,
Mm-hmm.
and how that, because that was very powerful. And I think that a lot of people who are part of this group are looking to feel more connected to their purpose. And I think that we get kind of hung up on what that means, like, to like superhuman or superhero, or, but like sometimes it's these things that are so like where they're just so innate within us,
Yeah.
and that we don't even see them for like the huge gifts and tools that they are. So,
Yeah. Okay. So what Mary's referring to is a very powerful story that I'm going to get to in 1 second. But as you were talking right now, because that happened my junior year of high school, but as you were talking right now, it reminded me of something that happened on my 7th birthday. Um, I remember that it was obviously my birthday, so like I got like birthday money and things like that. And then the ice cream man came, and like I grew up with a lot of cousins. So like my cousins were there, and some of them like had a couple dollars on them, but some of them didn't. And then like I bought them ice cream because it was my birthday and I had birthday money. So it was like my cousins want ice cream, I'm gonna get them ice cream. And that is like the feeling of that memory. Like I haven't thought about it in a really long time, but even now thinking about it, it brings me the same feeling that it did then. It felt really good to be able to help them with something so simple as getting them ice cream. But I used to think about that all the time and like, why did that make me feel so good? And it's easy to get caught into that as because I don't think I bought myself an ice cream. I think I just like bought them ice cream. Um, but I felt good about it. So it's easy to take that as help other people ignore myself. And I think I definitely did that in my years to come. I definitely think I did that, but it's not about that. It's just the fact that I have always wanted to help people. Enneagram 2, they say you're born with it and it stays with you. Like I'm the helper. Like that's just who I am innately. Um, but there was a situation where I think really the first time that I've ever felt depressed was um, in 7th grade. And I was always a great student, like great grades. So the fact that my grade, like I had 2 Fs in 7th grade, like that was a big thing. Like my parents knew that something was up. Um, but that was the first time I ever felt so down that like I wouldn't do my homework. I would come home and just sleep. Like that's my go-to depressive activity is to sleep. Um, and then it has come in waves definitely as I've gotten older, and junior year was a really hard year for me. Um, and I remember trigger warning for some. I remember being at a point where like feeling like I didn't want to live anymore. And we had a health center on campus in high school, and I went there and I talked to them, and um, I expressed that to her. I came back maybe a couple weeks later and she like asked me about it and I was like, no, I'm fine. Like, I'm good now. Like I felt like that then, but I'm fine now. And she was just like, okay, like what makes you feel like you're fine now? And I was like, I just realized what my purpose was. So like, now I'm good. And she was like, so what do you feel like your purpose is? And I said, well, I know that there are going to be people that need my help specifically as I get older. And if I'm not here, like those people might never get the help that they need. Like they need my help. So it's like they may never get any help that they need unless I'm here to help them. And that just felt real to me in that moment. I didn't think about like, wow, that was very profound for a 16-year-old girl, but that's just what it felt like for me in that moment. Like that was the truth. Like that was what I thought of. And in that moment, that pulled me out of that depressive state was knowing that like you can't do that. Like you have people that you're meant to help. And they may get help, but it's not going to be your help if you're not here to help them. Um and like I mentioned to Mary, like that doesn't mean that I always remember that. That like I don't always remember like, oh, I'm here with a purpose to help others, you know. But it does mean that it's always going to be in the back of my head. It's always going to be in my subconscious that that's my purpose and that's why I'm here. So I didn't start off doing nurturing young minds, but I have done other businesses before. I done network marketing, which was like from for a health company. So it was like my purpose then was to help people try and become healthier the best way that I knew how, which at that time was only through the company. I then started doing like social media marketing. My goal at the time was to help people grow their businesses and their online presence because that's those are companies that I believed in and I believe that they could really grow. So I wanted to use my ideas and my social media um, knowledge to help them grow their businesses. But the whole point was I was helping others. Like even, you know, they always say like, oh, what's your why? Excuse me, what's your why? And they want it to be about you and like, you know, what do you want to do? And like that was always so hard for me. Like because I don't know. Like, I want to help people. Like, that's what I'm doing this for. Like, that's why I would like undercharge for everything that I did because, like, I just want you to be able to afford it because I want to help you. So the fact that with nurturing young minds, I could take my love for children when wanting to help them, and really, it's the same thing, but for me, it's more than just like, oh, I want to help kids. Like, I like kids. It's I want to help set the future generations up for success. Like, I want to really help better the future generations. And also, I really want to change, like, once I get to that point in nurturing young minds, I really want to change the way the education system is in the US. Like, that's something that really I don't want to say that it bothers me, but it bothers me. You know, I'm now learning about the educational systems in other like developed countries that are doing really well. Finland is one of them, and they really focus on the child's well-being versus just the academics. And it's like the book that I'm reading is about an American teacher that went to Finland and had to change his whole like idea of how to teach children because that's just not the way they operate out there. So it's like, okay, well, what are we doing that we can change and how can I be a part of that change? So now that I'm like, I feel like I'm really walking in my purpose with nurturing young minds, I'm in no rush to like jump and, you know, tear down, you know, the school districts or anything like that. But I am going to work my way up and build that community so that we can all realize like, hey, there are some things that need to change and we can all work together on implementing those changes.
Definitely. I love whoa, it's so loud. Sorry. I love everything about all of this. And I think that this is in there's so much that you said even before you shared this story about realizing you're here to help people. But if we can just even isolate on this idea of you so clearly knowing that it's me and the way I am going to be there for the human, whoever the human is, that's going to matter in that person's life, right? And I think that so much of the time, because a lot of us feel disconnected for various reasons, we forget that just simply being, simply existing, like, and us having the relationships that we have, whether it's at work, whether it's at home, whomever, you meet someone at the grocery store and give them like a compliment and it changed their day, and just simply realizing the fact that I'm here and I do have something to offer. I don't even need to know what the hell that offering is, but my existence matters. And I feel like you just expressed it so beautifully. And I just want that to be something that everybody just takes away from this session, that, like, yes, nurturing young minds is focused on nurturing young minds. And here are the ways in which it's happening. But there's also the fact that your own energy, the embodiment of who you are, how you operate in the world, how you function, how you interact, how you're going about doing this it matters. Whereas somebody else is doing something very similar in some way, right? And there's room for all of us to show up exactly as we are. And we are going to touch the people's lives that we're meant to touch. And we, in turn, get to accept and receive all the beauty from those around us, right? And I just feel like this story is such a wonderful way. It's so simple to just show, like, you guys, we're all connected, and you don't even need to know all of the details. You just need to embrace it, you know? And I loved hearing that. And I also just really think, as these, you know, the people in this group and women, I want women to feel empowered, because Akila has amazing skills, right? She just told you, like, hey, I have educational skills. I've got like hands-on teaching experience. I can work with kids. I could do social media. I can do this, I can do that. And it's allowing yourself today, and you saw it too today in the group I wrote, proclaim that you are limitless. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like we put so many constraints on ourselves. And I feel like even this idea of you saying, you know what, I'm going to do this business, we'll see how it
Yeah.
goes. And just realizing I have so much to offer. And maybe I don't have a degree in marketing, or maybe I don't have a degree in this or that, but I have so much to offer, and I have the interest and the drive. So I'm going to do it. And so
Yeah.
there's like betting on yourself. And I'm not saying any of you listening to this need to go start a business. I'm just saying allow yourself to believe in yourself, because this is another element to the energy that Akila has, is that she is betting on herself at the same time as sharing all these gifts to nurture people. And I just want you to take that away and do whatever you want with it, but just realize, like, you are limitless, you are needed, and you're amazing, you know.
Yeah. 100%. I think even you saying that, I was like realizing that within myself, like, oh yeah, like you don't give yourself enough credit for just being you. Like, how often do we do that? It's like always feeling like you have to put a task to it. Like, people love me because I listen to them.
Yes.
People love me because I'm always willing to go help them. Or no, like people love me because they love me. They love my energy. They, like they love me for those reasons too, but it's just me being me, and we don't always acknowledge that within ourselves.
I think that's one of the reasons why, when I welcome people into the group, one of the things I say at the very end of like the welcome is, you are enough. You have always been enough, and you will always be enough. Because as somebody who was definitely grew up as a perfectionist, who felt like I needed to validate my existence, who felt like if I couldn't prove to you that I was worthy, then I wasn't. And it's like all of that is BS, right? And if I had somebody giving me these beautiful affirmation cards, by the way, affirmation cards, I posted a link to her Instagram below. But like if I had somebody who was able to reach me and express this, it would have been really helpful. And I'm not saying people didn't, because there is an element to each of us having to go through our journey. Like I had to go, unfortunately, I had to go through this journey of, more or less a lot of self loathing to get to a place to be able to really appreciate, like, that's not even the truth of who I am. Right. But that's another reason why I'm just so drawn to what you do, and think it's just so important, because that's what I do with my clients, right? I help them see their own beauty when they can't see it yet, or when they can only catch those glimpses. And then I remind them, no, look at all these things you're doing. You're moving forward, you're making progress. It all doesn't happen overnight, and I think that this is just two sides of a similar coin, on trying to help people just feel fully themselves, and not being wrong, even if they have improvements to make, right?
Yeah, 100%. I loved you saying that because it's something that like we all need the reminder of. And especially when you said that you were meant to go on that journey. We forget that sometimes too. It's until we look back and think like, wow, I'm glad. Like for me recently, I'm glad that those businesses didn't work, because they taught me so much. The first network marketing, um job that I had led me into reading personal development books. I was only reading fiction at that point. I was 18. Led me to personal development books, which led me to The Miracle Morning, which taught me about affirmations. I now create affirmation cards for kids. Like it was all meant to happen. And at the time, it felt like, "Ugh, I did this and I failed. I did this and it didn't work. This is not, what I'm supposed to be doing. What is it?" It seems very like unclear and hard at the time, but no, it's teaching me everything that I need in order to lead me to this moment. Like I'm going through things right now, making mistakes and, this business and learning different things. Um, but it doesn't make sense now, those things. But 5 years from now, it's gonna be like, oh, okay, like that's why that happened. So I loving the journey, appreciating the journey, but also really just giving ourselves the credit while we're on it, while we're failing, giving ourselves the credit that like I'm still enough as I am.
Exactly. So, can you tell everybody who's listening, maybe they're not watching, where to find you on Instagram or where to find you? Like, where do you want people to be able to follow you?
Yeah, I am mainly on Instagram and Facebook a little too, but Nurturing Young Minds on Instagram. You can find me there. I post a lot in my stories, having these conversations, remembering things. I feel like I have a lot of like millennial parents. So it's like remembering things from our childhood and how our parents would react versus how we're reacting to things with our kids. So I have those kind of rants and chats on my Instagram. So definitely come hang out with me there. And then I post a lot about these. So I have this deck, which Mary has, the affirmation cards, and those are just one sided, very cute, and they're original cards. And then I just came out with these. They can be used for younger children, but also for older children as well. Especially like the green cards versus the blue or yellow. Um, they're just more mature. Like it is okay to set my own boundaries. But all of these cards in this deck have a question and a reminder. So for this one is, can you share one of your boundaries? Because as parents, we might not know. So if the kid doesn't know what their boundaries are, then we can talk about what their boundaries might be. So it's just around starting those conversations, and getting to know and have that understanding of the children as well. And then the reminder is setting boundaries is an act of self-respect and self-love. And then you can get into a conversation about that. So that's like my main goal with these new ones, is to really have those conversations between adult and child. Whereas these younger ones are really just like speaking life into the young ones and getting them comfortable with hearing these kind of things and believing those kind of things about themselves. My daughter always says that her favorite one is, I learn from my mistakes. She says that all the time.
Good.
She'll be 4 next month, and like we were painting yesterday, and I'm like, oh, I messed up. She's just like, Mom, do you remember my affirmation with the dinosaur on it? It says, I learn from my mistakes, so it's okay to make mistakes, Mom. Like, and she's like constantly reminding. I'm like, kid, I wrote them, I know. But she loves that one, and she always reminds herself of it when she gets frustrated. And then like she'll get frustrated, she'll have her moment, and then she'll be like, but it's okay to make mistakes, right? Yeah, of course it is. Like, and you can try again. And you get better every single day that you try. So I really love those for that reason. It's the foundation. It starts them off with hearing those positive words and believing those positive words about themselves. And then the next deck um, helps with having those deeper conversations and really the parent getting to know the child more and allowing the child to have those conversations with the parent. So yeah, come hang out with me on Instagram at Nurturing Young Minds. And I'm excited to connect with all of you.
Yay. Well, thank you so much for being on with us today and sharing your awesome with us.
Uh,
I love what you're doing, and I'm definitely going to continue to be following you. And now I can't, apparently I need the new deck as well. But let us know. She's in the group. If you have any specific
Yeah.
questions, you can drop them below in the comments. And if she sees them, she'll get to those, or I'll point you to locate her if you're not seeing her. But thank you
Yeah.
so much for your time. We're just gonna
Thank
go ahead
you.
and thank you and you guys. She was such a trooper because I couldn't figure out how we were gonna get this to be going live, and so we did. So we're
We
gonna go
did it.
ahead and wrap that up. So bye everybody.
Bye.